I get it. I fully and completely understand now how somebody could read this book series and suddenly base their entire identity as a book reader around it. This is some real next level stuff. And my latest thing about all these books, among all the other things that I've said so far, is they're just meticulous as fuck. I mean, not only are they well paced, not only is there great character work, not only, let's not even get into the world building, oh my god. And these books are long. These books are like 900 something pages, and it's like a long 900 pages. It's not like, I don't know how to explain it. It feels like just, oh my god, as you're going through it, it feels long is what I'm saying. And not in a bad way, like in a good way. But the point is, even with how long they are, they're just so meticulously well crafted all the way throughout, on a level that most books and fictional universes can really only dream of. And it really all goes hand in hand with what I said before, which is that it just feels so big. The world feels big, the characters feel big, the consequences feel big. Everything feels just so epic in this. And then with how meticulous and well crafted and how well everything fits together, it's almost hard to put into words just how impressive it really is. That's not to say that these books are perfect, because I don't think that they are. I think there are some little maybe nitpicks that I would personally have about them. But if somebody were to come up to me and tell me, like we're having a conversation about this book, and say that they were utterly perfect, they would never change a single word, etc., I would not be surprised. Like, it just feels like that is an appropriate response that one might have after reading this book. Anyway, I want to go ahead and I want to drop my spoiler warning right here, because as usual, when I get to about book 3 and further into a series, it just becomes really difficult to talk about anything in the book without at least spoiling something maybe from earlier or from later. And to be quite honest, if I talked about the book in broad strokes, I would essentially have to repeat everything that I've said in my previous 2 book reviews. I'll go ahead and link those in the description below. And I'm going to go a little bit more full spoilers in this video than I normally do, just because, might as well talk about some of this shit that happens in this book. Am I right? One of those things that I really want to talk about is the epilogue. Yeah. We'll get there. Also, with that being said, I want to point out that it would be literally impossible to discuss everything that happened in this book. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them. And if I missed your favorite event or your favorite character, I'm very sorry. This would be a 3-day long video or longer if I did more than that. Now, first things first, Dany's back. And I said in the last video that Dany felt like she got sidelined hard for that book. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, it's just kind of a fact. She kind of like walked to a place, had a dream, and walked to another place, and that was like the entirety of her story arc for that, which was a huge step down considering that in the first book, she had like one of the most impressive arcs. I mean, I think so much so that they literally pulled all of her chapters out and made like a novella that won awards for that first Game of Thrones book. Anyway, in this one, she's back, and she's back to doing stuff, and she's on a roll. And when I say she's on a roll, she's on a roll. She's like plowing through towns. She's collecting slaves. She's building armies. She's on a roll. But it feels like every step of the way, she's just struggling, like hard. I mean, we're talking about a girl who's, what is she at this point? Maybe 14, 15 at the most, who has been bought and sold and abused her entire life. She had her husband killed, she had her child killed, and her womb made barren. And at no point in this child's entire life has she ever truly been emotionally or mentally mature enough to handle any particular situation that she's been asked to handle. Which just makes it all the more impactful when you're reading her chapters, and it just feels like she's struggling, and you just know why. And now she's going to gather forces and an army and march on Westeros to attempt to take the Iron Throne, which, if you're paying attention on those chapters, we know what kind of a chore that's going to be. And yes, she does have her advisors now, and she has some pretty good advisors, but one of them has tried to force himself upon her, and the other one is essentially a turncoat who's kind of on her side, her family's side, and then not, and switched sides and switched back, which in the politics and the world of Westeros makes sense why you would do that, but it doesn't really reinforce trust on the part of, the new person that you're claiming to be loyal to, Anyway, like I said, she absolutely succeeds at everything that she's attempting to do. She just looks like she's struggling. And I have some ideas as to where this character of hers might eventually end up going in the future books, but I don't really want to start posing any predictions until at least after Dance with Dragons, because I think that's the next book that she's featured in. I don't even want to let them get too far in my brain, Now, zooming out here for a second to talk about kind of like the book at large, the last book felt really like a political drama. The politics really took like front and center of that book for most of it. That was like the real driving plot, at least from how I felt. Now in this one, it really feels like George has kind of taken his foot off the gas as far as the politics is concerned, and he shifted gears into following more individual characters and progressing individual characters' stories forward. That's not to say that the politics is gone. The politics in Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire is like a evil machine that is moving forwards at all times, cannot be stopped. It will plow through and over everything in its path. But as far as the driving force focus of the book is concerned, like I said, I feel like he's shifted a little bit more to character growth. Also, I feel like the supernatural has taken a little tick up in this book, which is great, because I said before that felt like that was something that could have been boosted just a little bit, and I feel like that's exactly what happened. And like we got actual battles with the White Walkers or whatever they're called in this book, and the undead, and you got the giants of the north and the mammoths and the attacking of the wall. It got real cool real fast. Anyway, like I was saying, this one felt a little bit more character focused. You have Jon, of course, and then you have Davos, which is with that creepy fucking Melisandre bitch. Yeah, look out for her. But I really want to touch on Jaime for a second, because he's been kind of like a little bit of a nothing burger of a character. I mean, he threw Bran out the window in the first book, and then he spent pretty much the entire last book locked up. Well, now all of a sudden he gets to be a character, and he gets really to be a character. He has one of the most front center arcs of the whole book, which is quite impressive. And I don't remember him being this likable this quickly in the show. Maybe I'm mistaken. And not to say that he's likable, because there is not really much of a redeeming light to this guy. But his chapters are extremely enjoyable, and it's just so fascinating to see his arc and what he goes through. And some of the things that he does towards the end, especially the betrayals of Cersei, and not necessarily betrayals, but going against Cersei and going against his father and his family in general. These Lannisters, you can't really trust them. You got to keep an eye on them. You never know what they're going to do. And then, of course, there's all the stuff going on in King's Landing and with Robb Stark over there. And I guess this, of course, is probably the more political leaning parts of the book. But even then, it feels a little bit more character-driven and character-focused. But if we're going to bring up everything that happened in King's Landing and we're going to talk about Robb Stark, then we're going to have to bring up the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room, nobody should ever get married in Westeros. The Red Wedding being the big one, of course. And unfortunately for me, I had seen the show prior to this, so I knew pretty much what was going to happen. But that doesn't change the fact that this is like pretty heavy and pretty big and just so impactful to read, even though I pretty much was expecting it. And just the sheer audacity of George to take two of the biggest characters, what feel like some of the most biggest and most important characters, and just be like, yeah, fuck it, we don't need them. Just kill them off. It was intense. And this isn't even like the climax. This is like halfway through the book. This isn't even the climax of the book. It was wild that he just throws that in the middle. You're like, man, if that's the middle of the book, where are we going from here? It's crazy. And I don't even really like Catelyn, and it was hard watching her go. And actually, if we're going to talk about not really liking Catelyn, this book doesn't help that aspect either, because literally, like right before this, Robb is in a real tight pickle. He's going into battle. He does not have an heir. If he were to die, we have some real tough situations to fix. And he has this idea: what if we just legitimize Jon? This is a thing that has been done. There's a precedent already set. He could just say the word and it's done. And Catelyn very, very staunchly opposes him on this. Absolutely not. You will not legitimize Jon. He is a bastard. He cannot be trusted. He cannot be relied upon. I mean, what? Okay, so you are stuck in a damn near impossible situation. Your son is in a damn near impossible situation. You have a kind of minor light at the end of the tunnel here, being that you have another member of the family that could take over. But you're basically going to go ahead and talk about him like he's a dog and he cannot be trusted. And like, you have absolutely no idea what kind of quality of character he has as a person, even though you're the person who supposedly raised him. Get the f*** out of here, Catelyn. I mean, she literally compares him to Theon. I mean, clearly, this woman has been, to this point, presented as a relatively intelligent woman. So I'm assuming at this point, she's really just harboring a large amount of resentment for the fact that Ned had a bastard and this is that bastard, because she can't actually be that stupid, right? Anyway, we're going to move on because I probably shouldn't speak bad about the dead. The other wedding, of course, is Joffrey's wedding. And I've never been so glad to see somebody die in my entire life. I mean, of course I'm exaggerating, but man was he unlikable, and you should never wish bad things upon a child. But I'm glad that fucker's dead. So zooming back out here for a second, it's like he's taken everything that was good about the last two books and really just ticked everything up a notch and just made it just a little bit bigger, a little bit badder, and a little bit better. And then he's taken all that supernatural stuff, which I had said was just a little bit wanting, and knocked it up a notch as well, which is just fabulous. Everything just gets better. It is I just can't express how impressive this book was. And he continues to use some of the tricks that he's established previously, like that magical teleportation trick that I brought up in the last book, where Theon just kind of like, jumps from the end of one chapter to the beginning of another one, just kind of really sneak attack, even though it was set up before and you just had enough time to forget about it. He does it again here with Stannis, when Stannis is kind of interrogating Davos and he's essentially getting ready to kill Davos, when Davos brings out a piece of paper, which is essentially one of those messages that was sent from the north. Then, once you've forgotten that even happened 150 pages later, magically he just shows up north of the wall, just in the nick of time, just when somebody needs to show up to wipe out the wildlings and take out and save Jon Snow. And it's that little trick. It's the same trick from the last book you reused again, and I'm not even mad that he's using the same tricks on me 2 books in a row, because they're that good, they're that impressive, and it works just so well. And this brings Stannis face to face with Jon, after, of course, Jon's gone through everything with the wildlings and kind of got to know them, got in touch with them, came to understand them a little bit better, and came back to the wall. And now Stannis is going to offer Jon that thing that not even his own mother would consider allowing him to have, and that is legitimacy. And as soon as he gets offered it, as much as I want it for him, as much as I want him to be King in the North, Jon Stark, I can't. It feels icky. I'm like, no, Jon, don't. Not from Stannis, not from that creepy Melisandre chick. No. And he's like, the whole time he's considering it, I'm like, just stop it, dude. Like, oh no. Anyway, I mean, it's just essentially the things that they want from him. He would have to bend the knee to Stannis. That's pretty typical. But then on top of that, I think they want him to swear loyalty to their god, their Lord of Light. I think at one point they even mentioned that he would have to burn the weirwood tree at the heart of Winterfell. Like, as a sacrifice to the old gods. I think I could be making that part up. Maybe that was just like a fever dream that I had or something, but I swear I remember them saying that. Anyway, I was just like, no, thank you. So when he ultimately didn't do it and was nominated the Lord Commander, I was very relieved, to say the least. Then there's the epilogue to the book. And I'm just like, you get into it and it starts to go through it a little bit. And I'm just like, what are we doing here? And why is this relevant or important? And then they brought out the reanimated, waterlogged zombie corpse of Catelyn Stark. And I was just like, wait a second. I'm pretty sure I don't remember that shit happening in the show. I don't know what the fuck is even going on right now. And then it's like nightmare fuel, just like the way that it's written, that passage. You're like, oh God, like what is, oh my God. It's some, if there was a cliffhanger to have you prepped and ready to read the next book, that's one. I'll tell you right now. Oh my God. Anyway, so now after reading book 3, it took me until book 3, but I fully understand now why people say that this is like the greatest series of all time, and why this book in particular is considered by almost unanimously by the people that I've spoken to be the absolute best of the entire series. And I haven't even read the other two, and I fully understand why this one is so highly regarded out of the 5. And like I said, this book isn't perfect, but I don't think that that's a book thing. I think that's more of a me thing. I think that's just me, and the book don't 100% line up in, say, what I want exactly out of a piece of fiction and what it's giving me. If I were to nitpick, I would say it's just a little bit slow, maybe a little bit heavy on the politics, a little bit, maybe too many characters, maybe too many threads going at once, maybe too many irons in the fire, maybe. You know, just enough that the chapters that you're interested in are spread out just a little bit further than I would want them to be. But damn it if I can't give this anything but an absolute 9.5. As always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.